The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning. Welcome to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM. You can also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago, youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. We are taping this program on Monday, February 26th, and playback will be on Thursday, today, Leap Year Day, February 29th. I'm Father Greg Sakowicz, rector of the Cathedral in Chicago, and co-host Mark Teresi, who is dealing with our 175th, chairing the whole anniversary, 150th, 175th, working on a legacy program. Morning, Mark. How are you?
Morning. Very good. Don't forget, November, we begin our celebration for the 175th at Holy Name Cathedral. Our faith community was established 175 years ago.
And so 1849 in November will be 175. And then a year from November, as a cathedral, 150 years, because the Great Chicago Fire in 1871 destroyed our church,
right,
and then became a cathedral 4 years and a month later. So we have a great program lineup. Also get us, we mentioned, on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Chicago Catholics will have an opportunity to learn about and be in the presence of an object of reverence that, in one writer's words, has been a focal point of veneration, attracting pilgrims and believers seeking spiritual solace. The skull relic of Saint Jean de Brebeuf, which you'd normally find in Ontario Shrine, will be at the Church of the Holy Family, located at 1080 West Roosevelt Road on this Friday, tomorrow, March 1. Father Eric Immel is traveling with the relic across North America. His mission is to educate the faithful about the saints' mortal remains and their connection to the Jesuit priest who was canonized in 1930. Joining us on the program this morning via Zoom, all the way from Nebraska, is Father Eric Immel. Eric, welcome to the program this morning. How are you, Eric?
I'm great. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about this really exciting opportunity.
Well, this is wonderful, and we were mentioning before the program began that you were ordained a Jesuit in 2022, but spent time in Chicago during your, was it called the Regency or residency?
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for 6 years, actually. I did philosophy studies at Loyola Chicago up in Rogers Park. And then for 3 years, I was an administrator at Arupe College of Loyola University, Chicago, which is a new startup college model. Well, it's not so new anymore. It's about 8 years old now, but I was working downtown. So I was a regular attendee at your masses at the cathedral, Father Greg.
Oh, so no, a great friend of ours, this was with Mark Teresi. Do you remember know Wayne Majars?
The name is familiar, but I can't say that I know him. Forgive me.
Oh, that's okay, because he's about 6'8". Seems like everybody knows Wayne. You know, a very involved.
Yes, he worked in finance at Loyola Chicago.
Right,
sure.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. So
I had to put a different hat on there to remember, but yes.
Maybe as an opening question is, give us a little background of Father John or Saint John de Brebeuf, because we're so used to it in Chicago here. Saint John de Brebeuf Parish in Niles over on Harlem, a tremendous parish in the Archdiocese of Chicago for years. So give us his background, and in fact, two questions for me is his background and how you became so involved with Saint John Brebeuf.
Yeah, so Brebeuf was born in 1593. I suppose we could call him the second generation of great Jesuit missionaries of that time period. The first, of course, would be bedrocked by St. Francis Xavier and his work in the Far East. Brebeuf entered the Jesuits at age 24, and of course, the society has a rigorous program of formation. He did not, to some accounts, perform terribly well as a student, but he showed a tremendous capacity for language. And part of the charism of the society at the time in its missionary work was to meet the people out in the world as they were. And that involved oftentimes encountering cultures that were very different, cultures where there was a profound language barrier. So because of his capacity for languages, he was, and volunteered in some ways, to become a missionary in New France, which now we would call Canada. And so for 19 years of his life, he lived and worked among the Huron people. In the middle of that 19 years, he had 4 years back in France doing various work, but the majority of his life in the apostolate of the Society of Jesus was as a missionary to the Huron people. He learned their language, he learned their customs, he lived their way of life. He himself was a very tall and strongly built man. And so he got this name from the Hurons, Echon, which means the one who bears the load on his shoulders. He, I think, inspired the people that he worked with because of his willingness to enter into their reality and to be with them as they were, while also teaching them about the faith. And I think in his lifetime, we say that he baptized 7,000 people into the Catholic faith. So wow. A remarkable story. The thing that he's most remembered for is his death, his martyrdom. The Huron people who he lived among and loved were great enemies with the Iroquois, and Jesuits that worked in New Canada at the time, that worked in the missions among the native peoples of North America, understood that martyrdom was very likely, was a real possibility for their mission work. And so he and his Huron companions were captured by the Iroquois, along with another Jesuit, L'Allemand, and they were brutally martyred. The stories are difficult to read, and there are accounts of these stories. They hung like scalding hot hatchet heads around his neck. They tied birch bark around his waist and lit it on fire. They, in sort of a mockery of baptism, poured boiling water over his head. And then they consumed parts of him because they recognized his power. They thought that he was an incredibly powerful man. And so to absorb his power, he was even consumed, all of this while he was still alive. And so this was in 1649 that he eventually passed away. And very quickly after that, his relics were treated and acquired and made available for veneration, such that the cult of his own work and worship grew, and in 1930 he was canonized.
Now, can I ask, as you're traveling, have you been to many dioceses on this journey yet? Or where do we fit in?
That's a great question. So the history of our taking relics on tour actually began last year when we had an opportunity to visit some places across the Midwest with a relic of Blessed Carlo Acutis. The USCCB, I believe, was involved in bringing his relics to the United States to promote his cause for canonization. And when the other Jesuit provinces of the United States heard that the Midwest province had done this last year, there was some energy to do something similar this year. And also to draw people's attention more deeply into the history of saints of the Society of Jesus. So Jesuits from the Central Southern Province, the Midwest Province, and the East Coast Province have been involved in a collective effort to bring this relic around. So it started in Colorado. Well, it started in Midland, Ontario, and then it was brought into the U.S. It's been in Colorado. It's been in Texas. It's been in Louisiana. The relic has been in Florida. Right now, as we speak, the relic is in Lawrence, Kansas. And I'll drive down to Lawrence this afternoon to pick up the relic for my part of the tour. And we will start here in Omaha. Then we'll go to Lincoln, Nebraska. We'll make our way to Iowa City. And then on Friday, March 1st, we're going to end up in Chicago with the relic to share it with the people of the Archdiocese.
And what are you hearing from your contemporaries, your fellow priests, about the reaction to bringing the relic to their towns? Are you hearing anything from your friends about people's reverence, or what are they experiencing?
You know, the guys that have the relic currently have been moving a lot. So I haven't gotten the full account of their experience, but I do know that thousands of people have come to view this relic in many, many different places. And the diversity of people coming to see the relic is significant. We're talking high school students, but we're also talking parish communities. We're talking families. We're talking people of different cultural backgrounds, different expressions of Catholicism. And the relics are a way to draw us together, not only with each other, but also with the history of the church and the communion of the saints. So I've heard some beautiful stories, though, of people venerating with great care and affection, people seeking to have holy objects placed in the presence of Brebeuf, so that his intentions might be met more strongly.
Now, Eric, how did you get involved, Eric?
As well. I mean, I have no idea what will happen when we take this out, but we'll see. We'll see. I found last year that people were very compelled by Blessed Carlo, and so I'm expecting a similar and beautiful reaction this year.
Now, Eric, how did you get involved with Saint Jean de Brebeuf? I mean, did they ask you to go on tour with his skull as a relic, or did you volunteer? What's behind that?
Yeah, the group of us who work in vocation promotion for the Society of Jesus asked the shrine in Midland if we would be allowed to take this relic on tour for just over a month. So the priest who runs the shrine there, Father John O'Brien, is also a vocation professional. And so the shrine naturally closes every year for a couple of months for maintenance, for upkeep, for regular wear and tear. And that meant that the relic, the skull relic of Brebeuf, was available during this time period. So he gave us permission to do this. He gave us permission to take this relic out into the world and share it with the people of God. So that's how we ended up.
Where is your residency right now, and what is your main ministry?
So I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and my community is at Creighton University. The Omaha Jesuit community has both a high school and a university community. But my work is in vocation promotion. So I am full-time out on the road. I think about 70% of the time I'm not actually in Omaha, but I am out and about trying to be leaven for the church, trying to widen the funnel of discernment. And if I meet young men, especially who are interested in priesthood or religious life, I accompany them through a discernment whether or not to enter the Society of Jesus. So that's my full-time work.
Now,
and I just got back after 2.5 weeks on the road. So I was in Ames, Iowa. Then I was in Chicago for a little while. I spent some time in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is my hometown, at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I just finished a weekend retreat with the University of Iowa, their Newman Catholic Student Center. So my life is on the road. My home is the road at this point.
Now, as I understand it too, when it comes to Chicago, when the relic comes to Chicago, you're right next to St. Ignatius High School. They're going to involve the young people in a bit of education, because that's a different generation in terms of even understanding what this is about. How's that going to happen?
That's right. So a Jesuit priest is the chair of the theology department at St. Ignatius, and he's helped arrange a day this coming Friday where I believe all of the students of the school in some kind of procession or rotation will be able to enter the Church of the Holy Family and see the relic. My task is to give them a short presentation so that they understand the quick facts, the quick story of Saint Jean de Brebeuf, and also invite them to think a little bit about what we mean when we talk about theology of relics. So the whole school will filter through the church, and we're going to have a similar experience at Brebeuf Jesuit Preparatory School in Indianapolis. I'm going to bring the relic tomorrow to our high school in Omaha, Nebraska. We're going to be at the University of Detroit High School on Sunday this coming week. So educating young people about relics and about the communion of saints and about Jesuit saints is a big priority for us on this tour.
That's great. And you may want to reach out to the parishioners at Saint Jean de Brebeuf. I think that would be a wonderful mini pilgrimage trip. They're in Niles, Illinois, and that's their namesake. So anyway, go ahead.
I caught word that someone visited the parish this Sunday with some information, some invitation. So my hope is that the parish has been invited and that they feel most welcome. We would love to see many, many people come out, especially on Friday night in Chicago, for Mass, to view these relics, to enjoy each other's company, to pray for the saints' intercession. So I'm hoping lots of people come. It'll be really exciting.
And then have dinner at Little Italy.
Take us to break.
We'll be back. We'll be back.
I know that St. Ignatius College Prep is very generously hosting a small social event afterwards. There's an RSVP, so
great.
Get going if you want to find out. There's a QR code floating around in the world somewhere to register for that.
Good. We're going to take a little break. WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. We'll be back with Father Eric Immel, continue our conversation on St. John de Brebeuf's relic coming here to Chicago for special prayers, and I'd call it a mini pilgrimage that people can make to Holy Family on Roosevelt Road. We'll be back in a few minutes. Father Greg Sakowicz, Mark Tracy. Please stay tuned.
year 44 for me teaching. When I started here, there were teachers here that had taught me when I was a student. Now I'm the old person. Right now, I teach junior high math. I love when kids find what I'm teaching to be fun and they get it. I see that light bulb go off and it's a thrill. People are always amazed. What? You're here for 44 years? It's hard for me to believe, frankly. I love what I do. Every summer I think, oh, I miss the classroom. Even on the weekends, I think I can't wait to get back on Monday and teach those quadratic equations.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Catholic Charities' Loss program was created more than 40 years ago to help survivors of suicide wherever they are in the grieving process. This nationally recognized program continues to offer a safe, non-judgmental environment where survivors of suicide can find community, direction, and resources for healing after suffering the devastating loss of a loved one. Online and in-person services are available for individuals, couples, children, and families of all faith traditions. To learn more, call 312-655-7283 or email loss@catholiccharities.net. Don't suffer alone. We are here to offer loving outreach to survivors of suicide. Contact Catholic Charities today.
I am a seminarian.
The Church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
We're back at WNDZ 750 AM, Catholic Chicago. You can go to youtube.com/CatholicChicago with Father Eric Immel. Father Eric, so fascinated me to hear that you're the vocation director there. I had the privilege for 4 years of working with Brother Paul Benarczyk, Brother Ronnie Hingle to establish a national fund for Catholic religious vocations, which funded college debt for folks that were considering a vocation. So I got to learn a lot about vocation directors from around the country. And you're really a specially dedicated breed of religious. What prompted you to take that job? Father Greg was a recruiter for vocations for the Archdiocese of Chicago. I think he had the hardest job in the Arch.
Just like Eric does now.
Exactly. So what prompted you to say yes to that?
Well, let me say first that in the Society of Jesus, we have two levels of professionals that do vocations work. We have vocation promoters, which is my job, which is to bring our identity, bring our spirituality, bring our joy out into the world, to be on the road and promoting both the Society of Jesus, but also the priesthood and in general, a culture of discernment. Mm-hmm. Then we have vocation directors who accompany men through the application to the Society of Jesus. And to be honest, the answer to your question is that I, under holy obedience, was asked to be a vocation promoter.
Oh.
I didn't necessarily have this in mind for my first job after ordination. And in fact, many people are surprised to find that immediately after ordination, I was put into vocation work. But I'll tell you, it has been an unbelievably rich experience. I have, in my year and a half doing this work, encountered the fullness of expression of Catholic faith. It is a beautiful church. It is a diverse church. People are really trying to find depth of relationship with the person of Jesus and to find depth of relationship with this 2,000 plus year institution, its history, its theology, its customs, its cultures. And it is an absolute privilege to be welcomed into all of these different kinds of spaces and both represent the Society of Jesus well, but also, and again, encourage a culture of discernment. I think learning how to make good decisions in light of God's will and in light of the relationship God is calling us to have is an utter privilege and an utter gift. The world needs so much, and the world needs so many good people to respond to the needs of our times. And I think discernment is the key to inviting people to that experience. So under holy obedience, I began this work, and I am thrilled to continue doing it for another year and a half or so, at least.
Or maybe a lifetime.
Yeah, Eric, you are so filled with enthusiasm and joy. For maybe just a moment in the last several minutes here, your own vocation story. Are you originally from Wisconsin?
I'm originally from Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh.
That's right.
Well, then time out.
No, you said the wrong word.
Now hold on, time out. Are you a Green Bay Packer fan?
I grew up in a city where the largest physical object is the stadium of the Green Bay Packers.
Right.
Yes, I am a proud Packer fan. And I was happy to live in Chicago for 6 years and maintain that identity.
Wow. And I hate to say this, but the Packers own the Bears.
Yeah, they sure do.
As far as I'm concerned, this program is over, so let's just bring it to a close. And,
put on the music.
Let's go to music. Thank you for joining us, Eric. This is over. And, I'm sick and tired of the Green Bay Packers.
I'm here. I'm trapped by you guys. So
only the Bears. Just to flip gears a little bit, now getting back to Saint Jean de Brebeuf, and that is on Friday, tomorrow, March 1, what time does it open to the public at Holy Family on Roosevelt Road? What is the day's itinerary?
Yeah, and it's funny, I actually have to remind myself, I think, and let me pull up the schedule. This is very unprofessional and totally unpolished.
We've got it right.
I'm sorry. I'm managing all of these different stops all at the same time, and so I just have to get the timing right.
I think we have it right here, Eric, and that is 6 o'clock Mass.
Yep, we're going to begin with Mass at 6 o'clock, and all are certainly welcome to that Mass. And then I'm going to give a brief presentation, again, about theology of relics, about the life of Jean de Brebeuf, and invite people into how they might pray for something through his intercession. That might be healing, that might be clarity, whatever it may be. We believe that the communion of saints pray on our behalf. And so inviting them to that experience. And then we'll have that relic available for public veneration from whenever that presentation ends until about 9 o'clock at night. So it's a tight schedule, but there should be plenty of time to experience this relic, to get close to it, to see it, to pray with him, and to pray for our needs and the needs of the church through his intercession. So Mass at 6, presentation briefly at 7 o'clock, and then an opportunity for public veneration, for personal prayer, to actually approach the relic and to make an intercession known.
And I see here that in order to learn more information, you can go to 312-492-8442, extension 3, 312-492-8442, extension 3, and according to this, to learn more online, go with Wendy McCarthy at holyfamilychicago.org, Wendy McCarthy at holyfamilychicago.org. Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, too, I think it's important for our listeners and viewers to know that there's parking, free parking adjacent to the church, because many people have a hesitancy driving into downtown, especially that's going to be near rush hour. But there's parking there, and it's a 2-minute walk from the parking lot to the church. So if you're, in the suburbs, or even if you're in the city somewhere and you're thinking of coming down, but you're worried about where am I going to park, the parking's right there, the reception's right next to the church. It's very convenient for everybody.
In the last few minutes, Eric, Saint Jean de Brebeuf, and you've learned about him, and we'll learn more in the next couple of weeks with your talks and presentations and veneration. How has the relic of Saint Jean de Brebeuf touched your life?
That is such a good question. And I would maybe give you 2 different answers. The first is this, that it's becoming more and more clear to me that Jean de Brebeuf loved the people of God that he ministered to. And it's a complicated story. It involves colonization of the New World, and it involves interaction with First Peoples and Native peoples. It involves a brutal martyrdom. But at the end of the day, what I am compelled by is that for 19 years, this Jesuit, this tall, strong, and at times suffering man, was willing to give his entire life to this community of people and to invite them into relationship with Jesus, and also to honor them by learning their language, learning their ways, learning their custom. It was where he felt called to be. It was where he wanted to be. And so, again, we most often remember his death. His martyrdom is a brutal story. But I want to equally lift up the gift of his life and his love for these people. And I think that's true of martyrs across the history of the church, that there are people that martyrs love involved in the story. So that's one thing. The other thing might be this. I'm coming to understand more deeply that we are almost by nature a people of relics, that we want to be close to great figures of the past. Many people, for example, have a grandmother's rosary who passed away. Or in the case of the Jesuits, when we profess vows, we in my province take the vow cross of a Jesuit who had passed away. We keep these sacred objects close so that we have a taste of those that in our faith we believe enjoy fullness of life with God forever. To be with the relic of a saint is to be close to a part of the communion of God, a part of the people of God who in this life witnessed Jesus so profoundly that now they are enjoying fullness of life with God forever in heaven. So to be with this relic is to be that close to somebody who enjoys the presence of Christ, and that compels me deeply.
Beautiful.
So it's a reflection on my own human nature and on what I need to sustain my own faith, especially when times get hard. And Brebeuf went through it, man. I mean, he went through it, and his courage and his endurance and now his sanctification is a witness to me of how I'm called to live my own Christian life.
We need to bring the program to a close here, Eric. I hate to cut this short, but we're down to the last 15 seconds. So I want to thank in a very special way Father Eric Immel, who this Friday, tomorrow, March 1, will have the skull relic of Saint Jean de Brebeuf over at Holy Family on Roosevelt, and from 6 until about 9 p.m. I want to thank you, Father Eric, for joining us. You've been a tremendous guest. Thanks to co-host Mark Teresi.
Pleasure.
Our producer engineers would be Michael May, Clint Cottrell, Brian Hakeem, and Brock Twall. God bless. Have a great weekend.